Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Tales from the Fandom. I have another guest joining me straight from the Twitterverse, where I have been super happy to check out all of her awesome creations that she makes out of chainmail. And I know for a fact we'll be talking about this near the end of the podcast today. But I am joined by Emry. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. I don't know how, the great grand Twitterverse. I was going through my actual follower list earlier this week, and I was like, I don't remember how I meet some of these people, but I know for a fact that I most likely followed you because of the work that you do for your business, and I just have to say it's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's either chainmail or D&D on Twitter, so it's one of two ways you found me.
Yes, and they kind of just merged together on some of the stuff because you got some awesome dice bags.
Yes, thank you.
Now you've got a lot of different fandoms that you're into, and one of the ones that is kind of like current with me because my kids are going through the movie series is Lord of the Rings.
Absolutely.
Did you get into Lord of the Rings first through the books, or did you start with the movies that came out?
I started with the movies. I remember watching the first one when I was a teenager, and I had never really seen anything like it. I did not have any kind of introduction to the fantasy world in my childhood. And so I saw Lord of the Rings and I was like, what is this? And I remember binging it over and over and watching, movie marathons and stuff like that in my basement, just like taking up all that I could from the movies. And then I went out and got the books and went through those, and it just kind of grew from there.
So I just want to make sure I heard it correctly. You watched the movies and then you went to get the books and you got into the books.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. That's cool. I know people, friends of mine, that they try to get into the books and they're like, nope, can't do it. Just going to watch the movies.
They're not the easiest books to read, but because I enjoyed the movies as much as I did, I wanted to read the world that had been created. And just whenever you do a movie adaptation, there's no way that you can get all the good stuff from the novels. So I figured I must be missing something.
Oh my goodness. There's a lot of somethings in the books.
Yes. Yeah. Once I read them, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
When you first watched Fellowship of the Ring in the theaters and got into the Lord of the Rings series, what was it that drew you to it?
The adventure and the journey, just the storytelling, following kind of someone on the more innocent side going through all these perils and then, figuring out how to overcome them. I thought that was a really neat kind of concept. Plus, I'm a sucker for sword fighting. So that did it too.
Out of the three, as far as movies go, do you have a favorite?
The original, if it's the extended edition, like the Fellowship of the Ring extended, because there's just so many good little moments in there in the extended bits that when I watch like the uncut version, I'm like, oh, what? That's not it. Right, yeah.
That was something that I did. I'm hitting my mic. That's something that I saw. Because like I said, I've been going through with my kids. They've seen Fellowship, and we did Two Towers over the Christmas break, and I have the extended Blu-ray, so we watched them. And then I saw that they showed up on Netflix, but they're not the extended editions. And I was watching Return of the King last week, and I was like, man, they're really because Return of the King is like an extra 40 minutes of material, and I'm like, man, there is so much that is just cut from that movie in the original theatrical release. And I'm like, it's like extended editions or nothing.
Well, it's just so much extra flavor in there. I mean, the movie itself was good. I remember seeing Return of the King in the theater, and it was fantastic. And I was like, that was great. And then you watch the Return with the extended stuff, and you're like, oh man, there's just so much extra, right? Even just I love the little flavor stuff, like the Hobbit singing in the first one, or like Mr. Bilbo's trolls, that kind of thing. Like the little
Hmm.
flavor bits that you don't get from the theatrical, which I understand, but much prefer extended.
Exactly. Like, yeah, I told the kids because they have access to Netflix, and they asked if they could watch it, and I said, "Nope, you're not allowed. You have to watch the extended editions with me."
Excellent parenting. I'm here for it.
I'm doing my best. I'm trying to get them all interested in it. So far, so good on a number of different fandom fronts. I'm really happy that they've been able to sit through the movies. I mean, they're 11 and 10, so it's like I bribe them with like, oh, we'll order pizza, or we'll have like food delivered, and we'll
Yeah,
have
make an
snacks.
event of it.
Well, you kind of have to with the lengths of the movie. You're like, okay, yeah, I know we're going to be here for like 4 hours. Let's just try to make it a good 4 hours.
Yeah, when I first sat down with my daughter and watched Harry Potter, I felt like the most victorious mother ever. I was like, yes, it's beginning.
They are my kid. Like, we have the Blu-ray of those movies, and they're to the point now where I got tired of them. I was like, no, I can't do it anymore. Like, I can't watch them anymore. Like, it's just they've run it into the ground because they get that obsessive personality of, okay, let's just watch this one again.
Yep. Yeah. My daughter gets stuck on one as well. So we've watched the first one. I don't know how many times, but anytime I'm like, how about the second one? Nope, I'm just going to watch this one again. Really? Okay.
Now, in the world of Lord of the Rings, who is your favorite? Who's your favorite character?
I mean, I feel like it's a cop out because I also feel like it's everybody's favorite, but I love Aragorn. He's just,
Okay.
like I said, I'm here for the sword fighting, and he's, moral compass and strong and leader and all those good things. Yeah.
I like Aragorn. I like one of the things I always find fascinating is when you read about the like the filming, and you're like, oh, he kicked that helmet and actually broke his toe,
Right?
or
As an
or
actor, I just have mad respect for him in
oh
terms
my
of like
god,
doing so many of his own, so much of his own fighting and that type of thing. I just
right? Like, that's the thing that gets me is like the everything that they as a cast went through together for filming. And then for him specifically, he wasn't even like the main person to be cast. He came in like, I think it was 2 weeks before filming started. They'd replaced the first Aragorn with him, and I was
yeah,
like, okay,
so crazy.
it is. It's wild, but it's so good.
Yes. I completely agree. I mean, I'm always here for the hobbits as well. Like I enjoy the brand of comedic relief that the goofy hobbits brought. Merry and Pippin are probably next up on my list. But yeah.
Yeah, when I was watching Return of the King, I was like, oh my, like I was watching the Merry and Pippin scene, and I got emotional, and I haven't watched Return of the King in years, but I got emotional when after Pippin grabs the Palantir, and they have to separate, and Mary's like, I'm not going with you, basically. And I just felt so bad, like my heart ripped for them because
Mhm.
they're
Well, they're
just
just
they're
used
just
to being a
together.
pairing, right? They're used to being together.
They are. And
Well,
I
I mean, when
always
you look at character arc too, I mean, who came the farthest in the movies, who had to change and adapt the most? I mean, they've got to be up there.
hmm absolutely, especially I think, but it's either between those two or Sam, honestly, because I mean, Merry and Pippin, and if you read the books, like they each like join the like Gondor or Rohan for serving them, and you read those appendixes, and they're like, yeah, they served them like for years and years, and
Yeah.
showed up and did stuff. It's so deep. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite moment in the movie trilogy?
Oh. Oh, there's so many good ones. I love a lot of a lot of moments in The Return of the King. I like the kind of joy of the drinking games that came, because it's such a stress release after the stressful battle. But then the moments later, especially later on in the film, when the mouth of Sauron comes out and is taunting them, and all their reactions to seeing what they've done, they think is in vain. It's just that moment is one that I always kind of remember, and all their reactions to it.
One of the things that my kids were spoiled about is we watched Fellowship, and of course Gandalf falls with the Balrog, and they had looked at the Two Towers box, and it's got Gandalf on it. They're like, "What? He's not dead. He's not dead."
No, and that's one of my things that I guess I regret about the movie. I when I read the books and realized how cool of a character Faramir was, that's the only character I feel like they just like truly did a disservice to, especially in like the second, third books or in the movies there. So it was just, I would have loved to have seen him kind of come into a more, I don't know, more based on the book in terms of his support of Frodo and the journey and things like that.
Yeah, I think I remember reading something about, because Faramir is like one of those pure characters, like just so like 100%. If you're going on like D&D alignment chart, he's like lawful good.
Yep.
And I think I had read somewhere, and maybe I'm totally wrong, I'm making it up, I don't remember at this point, that it was just it was too hard to get to translate that into the film.
And that's understandable. And I mean, almost every character's gonna have its different quirks. You take from a book to a movie, things are gonna get lost in translation. But I remember because I'd watched the movies first and then I went and read, I was like, oh, I love this guy. Where was this guy? So it's just kind of, yeah.
Where was that Faramir?
Right? But
what happened to him?
I think one of my favorite things, though, and this is such a like an outside of the moment, but I went and watched the first movie with a friend who, like, I hadn't read the books, but I at least knew about them, and she didn't know it was a trilogy. So at the end of the first movie, when they all get split up and Sam and Frodo are like walking off, and it went black, and she stood up before the whole crowd had said a word and was like, "What the crap?" And like that was always because she didn't realize that there was the next movie. She was waiting for kind of conclusion to come. Oh my God, I've never laughed so hard.
That happened at the theater that I was in as well, and it just cracks me up. It for a movie that's based on a book series that's been out for so long, I feel there'd be some of that like osmosis, like you just kind of know. But yeah, when it went to black, people are like, what happened? We have to wait another year.
Right.
It was mind blowing. And then the other thing on the other side is Return of the King, where you keep thinking that the movie's over.
There was like 8 endings.
Surprise! Here's another ending. Surprise! It's like an hour of endings.
Yep. I know, it's so easy to be like, not annoyed by it's the wrong word, but like, okay. But then you think of like, how do you end something as epic as the Lord of the Rings? Like, how do you do that justice wrapping it up? I don't know.
Yeah, it is wild. Like that's the one of the things where you just have to kind of hit on so many of the different things, and you have so many different characters that need that resolution, and you just want to say, give them the proper send off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you watched the movies, you've read the books. Now, did you go further with the books, like beyond the Lord of the Rings trilogy?
I've read The Hobbit once, and I have not read the Silmarillion. Oh, I think I said that wrong. I don't know. I haven't read any of the appendices or the extras.
Same here. I've read The Hobbit. I generally read it real quick when I decide to get into it. I just skip the songs because it's like, okay, the songs are a couple pages long, and I just skip and move forward with it. And I can generally tackle it in a day or so. But the trilogy is one where I just have to take my time with it and get into the groove. But I have not read any of the extra stuff. I've heard some of the stuff is really good, but at the same time, it's just there's a lot of it, and it's a lot of like that same depth of book.
Yes, and I just while I love the world and like I'm actually about to start running a D&D campaign in Middle Earth on Saturday. And so I'm kind of diving back in a little bit. I've been listening to the audiobooks again and that type of thing, but I'm just not willing to kind of jump that next step. So I'm like preface every game I run with like I am not super up on the lore, just bear with me.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's funny that you mentioned that because that is another fandom that you are into, and you have provided a perfect segue into that
Oh.
fandom of tabletop role playing. Now, Mike, before we dive immediately into it, I do want to ask, like, are you running it using like the actual Middle Earth like books that they've got out, or are you just kind of like planting Middle Earth into like 5th edition D&D or whatever edition
No,
game
I'm
that you're in?
actually using the Adventures in Middle Earth books. So
Sweet.
I I love DMing, but my schedule keeps me fairly busy and I don't ever feel like I can dedicate enough time to fully kind of mapping out a campaign. So for the first time I want to try DMing and I'm going to run it from a module and just flavor it.
Hmm.
So we're going to try running the Brie module and see what happens.
That's awesome. I picked up those, I think as PDFs on Humble Bundle. They had a really great deal.
Yes.
And I said, I can't turn it down. I might never read them, but at least I have them so I could read them.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting concept how they've taken, the world of 5e and translated it over to like a low fantasy setting, right? There's no magic or not a lot of magic, but it's I'm intrigued to see how Saturday's going to play out.
Well, I'm interested in hearing all about it, or at least reading about it if you post it on Twitter.
I will.
Now, how did you get into tabletop gaming? Because everyone has their story, whether it's finding it in the fantasy book section or seeing people playing it or even just discovering it on the internet, like through like MMOs or something like that. Like, what's your story?
About 5 years ago, we were hanging out with our friends, and we live 10 hours away from a good set of friends of ours from university. And we were trying to come up with something that we could do online that wasn't just like a video game where we didn't really converse with one another. And so we decided we were going to try to play D&D to stay in contact with each other because you had to schedule events. And so you get to jump on and hang out with these people. So on the way back, kind of we were visiting in the middle of both of us, so we both had like 5-hour drives back. So we went and each got the player's handbook, and my husband got the DM guide, and I read aloud to him as we drove, and we just kind of jumped into it on Roll20 with our friends, and it kind of went from there. And now we have like multiple home games and online games, and it's just kind of snowballed in our lives.
D&D is the big one, like the big the Cadillac. It's been around forever. Of course, like we've said, 5th edition is the latest edition of it.
Mhm.
How has your experience been with Dungeons and Dragons, as far as either a player or if you've DM'd DMing? How's your experience been with it?
I mean, I love it. Being an actor, the role playing and the improv part of it is super fun for me. I don't know how I would fare in like a full on min-maxing dungeon crawl group, but the groups we play with have a pretty good balance of rolling the dice and tactics and role playing and all the good stuff. I haven't played a lot of other systems to know. Like I'm just starting in a Pathfinder game.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed DMing it as well. Like I said, I just didn't have a ton of time, so I felt like I was doing my groups a disservice. So I'd ended up
Right.
kind of backing away from that, which is both groups are still running, thankfully. We had other people step in to DM, and it was one of them is my bi-monthly group that I just love. It's 5 girls DM'd by our DM is Dave, and he's crazy and he loves taking us on wild rides, and we have a great time with it. So it's been fun. It's been good.
That's awesome. I love like tabletop gaming.
Do you play?
I used to. I got into it in high school, but didn't really get into like actually playing until my third year of college, and I got into it like super heavy. I used to have a much bigger collection of books than what I have now. I sold off some of them during moves, unfortunately, and I kick myself every day when
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
could see that.
I
Oh,
wish I still had those books. But I do love playing. I love Dungeons and Dragons and a number of other different game systems. It's just I don't have a lot of time between work and the kids with school and activities, and so I've been trying to get them interested in playing, but they don't really. So like they're old enough to get it, but we just have their personalities don't really mesh sometimes with working together,
right.
and it's been problematic. Like one of my sons was like, I'm going to use my dragon breath and hit everybody, and I'm like, but you're going to hit your brother and sister.
That's fine.
It's okay.
Yeah,
And so it's something where I think they just need a little bit more maturity at the table
right.
first. But
Have you heard of No Thank You Evil?
yes, I actually have it. I backed it on Kickstarter,
Okay.
but
It might be a
but
little young for your kids from what it sounds like.
yeah, like I tried to do it with them when they were younger, but again, they like that at that time they didn't really have the attention span for it, and now they've grown out of it. They're definitely
Okay.
in the D&D range of like getting into it. It's just
Different play
they
styles.
yeah, they got to figure that out.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I love playing. It's just I don't have the time, and I enjoy watching people stream or listening to actual play podcasts or just being on the Twitter and reading about other people's stories.
Well, I hope you get to play soon, though.
I hope so too. One of the things I love to ask about people that play D&D specifically is, do you have like a favorite class that you just love? Like you're like, I'm down for playing rogue. Like let me backstab people all up and down the place.
I I have a type. I guess I always play the smartass caster, like without fail. It doesn't matter if it's a bard or a sorcerer or a wizard. Like I love casters because I like problem solving with spells. Like I like making the DM go, "Oh, okay, never thought of it being used that way." Like I just like to take something and be like, "But can I do this with it?" And just
Hmm.
play around. So that's my favorite thing to do. And then my characters always just kind of shockingly are based around a sarcastic woman who speaks her mind. Um, I don't know why, but they all kind of tend to come out the same. So the last two characters I've made for Pathfinder and the a West or an Adventures League that I'm starting up have been more like happy-go-lucky fighter types. I'm like, I have to try something new.
Okay. I in all of my years of playing, um I think I've only played a magic caster once. Like if I had to, I'd play more of like a cleric if I had to do magic, or a druid, but I stayed away from wizards and sorcerers.
And see, I would probably pick a wizard anytime. Like, other than the fact that I like to vary it up and try different things. If I
Mhm.
had to sit down at a table and they said you can only play one character for the rest of the time in D&D, be wizard in a second.
What's your favorite spell?
Oh, that's tough. Right now, because my group is in a bit of a dungeon crawl scenario, I've been enjoying Rary's Telepathic Bond, which is, I can't remember what it came out in. It was one of the extras, but basically, if I cast it, my group can all talk in our heads to each other, so we don't have to talk out loud. It
Oh, that's awesome.
just seems helpful. But
Yeah, and
I'm also like a
it's totally
fire.
not metagaming either. So
No, yeah, and I play a fire genasi wizard, so I'm known for my fireballs, because I light up on fire and I throw fire, and that's kind of my theme. But I try to not just DPS kind of thing. I try to come up with other stuff that'll help.
right, exactly. Do you have like you mentioned the genasi? Do you have a type when it comes to picking like the race background, or I think like Pathfinder uses ancestry currently, but like do you have a type? Like I always gravitate towards halfling. Like give me my halfling barbarian, halfling rogue, half like
Little
I'm
rig.
all about halfling.
See, this is where I get called boring by a lot of people. I love human and half human variants. I play a ton of humans, or like the Genasi, half fire elemental, half human, or I played a half elf in another game. So I'm trying to breach beyond that. I don't generally care for the animalistic creatures. Like, I don't think I'd ever play a tabaxi or one of those types, but I mean, I'm not against people having them in our table, but it's just not my style.
There's so many like new things that have come out. Especially one of the things was like, oh, tabaxi, turtle. Was the Aracoca, the bird ones? I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
man, these weren't around when I was playing. I
No, and
wish
then
they
now there's
were.
like an elephant one too. I was looking at that yesterday in D&D Beyond.
Oh yeah, the elephant one. I think I can't remember where they came from, but
Yeah.
I do remember it. And it's like, oh yeah, that there's like so many new things. And here I'm like, I'd like to play a goblin or a kobold. Just something like
You like the little
out there.
creatures, yeah.
I'm all about little. I'm all about like hiding in the shadows, and you don't really see me, and let me go do my own thing. And yeah, I love the little ones.
Nice.
Do you when you play D&D, do you play like with one of the campaign modules, or do you play like stuff off of like DM's Guild, or is it homebrew? Like what do you go with?
Our Friday night campaign, which is a bunch of teachers from our school, which is really fun. We play in my husband's homebrew world of Nisia. And he's our DM and has been, it's third and a half year going on with that group. And then our Dungeon Slay Out is what we call it. Our Dragon Slay Out, sorry. Our Dragon Slay Out girls group runs a combination of Tal'Dorei and homebrew and some modules within that. I started it in Tal'Dorei, and then I had passed it off to Dave, and he's kind of taken it in his own direction.
Okay, that's the Critical Role one, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first one, because I just saw that they're coming out with a D&D book for the second setting. I'm not Critical Role like savvy on this.
Yes, yeah, it was their first setting. I liked the concept of it because I was familiar enough with the world that I could, have context, but nobody at the table is so familiar that they wouldn't know, or that they would know like the ins and outs of everything. So it was a good kind of midway setting for me, rather than creating from scratch, which is above my abilities.
I totally understand that. I know when we were in college playing, there'd be times where the person who was running the game would spend hours like putting his like he'd get done with like his classes, and he'd go into his room and like just write stuff up and pour his heart into it, and then here we come, and yeah, we would break his game. And there were a few times where, because we played in like a shared dorm room, and there were times where he just got up and like went into his room and slammed the door and would not come out for the rest of the evening. It's like, come on, dude, like we didn't mean to like break your campaign and
Did
what
you
you
break
wanted to do.
D&D? That's impressive.
We definitely broke our DM on occasion.
I suspect that both of my DMs at some point are ready to break as well. Maybe not walk away and slam the door break, but from exasperation. It's got to be, especially Dave.
Now, you mentioned playing Pathfinder, or getting ready to play Pathfinder. Is there other games out there that you've seen? Because you and I kind of share like that same tabletop Twitterverse. Like I know that we overlap on some people.
Mm-hmm.
Is there some like games that you've seen and you're like, I'd like to try that?
I have been wanting to run Outbreak Undead forever. I love zombies. Zombie apocalypse is like a genre that I'm down for, but it's a kind of a complex system, and I need to watch a couple playthroughs and listen to some stuff before I'm ready to run it. But that's one that's like on my list. I got a couple things at Gen Con last year to like supplement, and I've got the books and I've the little mats and all the stuff. So I'm ready to run that one when I'm a little bit more comfortable with the playthrough of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty much willing to try most of them. I'm not a big space person.
Okay.
I'm more fantasy based in terms of interests. So I probably wouldn't try any of the space based frontier things, but I mean, I just like to roll the dice and role play and roll with it. But anything, I'm willing to try kind of any concept, and if it doesn't stick, it doesn't stick. But
Exactly. That's always a good thing. And I know I've talked about it on a number of different podcasts at this point, but we live in this wonderful like time period of if you want a game based on anything you can think of, it's pretty much out there somewhere for you to find it and play it.
yep.
And I have so many. I told somebody today, I was like, I've kickstarted a lot of stuff and I just download the PDFs and I have it just like a master PDF folder of games that I have paid for and I will most likely never run.
But there's your next podcast.
They're there for like me. They're there for me reading about stuff and supporting the people making it. And
Absolutely.
oh my gosh, like there's just so much wonderful stuff. Like 10, 20 years ago, you'd never think that it would be like this. And it's just I'm loving where the community is going, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
I'm excited to when I start DMing again more full time, and I don't know when that is because I don't think life is going to slow down anytime soon. But this hypothetical when it happens, I'm really excited to go support like the people that create like the inns and taverns and patrons and warlock patrons and all that kind of stuff. These people that are coming up with this cool homebrew concepts and like. I mean, that just makes my job easier as a DM is I can go pull the cool stuff they've already come up with, people who are more creative than me and with their words and their images.
Oh my goodness, yes. There was a subclass that came out that, let me get it right. Hannah, is it Hannah Rose? I'm give me one more. I want to make sure I get it right.
For sure.
Because Hannah Rose? Yes. Okay. So there's a subclass that Hannah Rose came out with, and I believe she did it in cooperation with Devin Rue for like a map.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a cartographer subclass of Ranger, and I was like, that sounds so awesome. And not only does it sound so awesome, wouldn't it be cool if somebody made like this adventure where you have this cartographer person and they're in this whole new world and they just have to like map the world, and they've never been there, and they've got to have interactions with the people who live in this world and dealing with like language stuff, and it'd be so neat to just have something like that to play around with.
I'm trying to find one that I had seen. One of our girls posted it, and it was they took the classes and made kind of a silly outcome to them, but we were all here for it because our girls group wanted to play it. But like the fighter was like a break dancer kind of thing, like it was like a dance fighter, and there was like a chef, and so it was just really fit like our girls group to the T. And it was just like, yes, we need to play this. We haven't yet, but we're going to.
Oh yeah, there's so many good things out there. I know I saw like baby bestiaries and different warlock patrons, and yeah, like you said, like it's just there's so many great things out there that I just would love to get my hands on and read and play with and just try out, and just so much.
Right.
Before we switch off to the next thing, I do want to ask, do you have like a favorite die? Like, do you love your D20? Do you love the power of the D4 and how it can wound people?
Okay. So specific die in the set. I thought you meant set. I was like, you're making me pick out of all of my sets of dice. That's not fair.
No. That's not fair to your dice. They'd get mad.
Right? They might come back at me. Favorite dice. I mean, Fireball. I'm all about the D6s. How many of them can I roll? So D6 is too simple. That's like every board game, though. I like the D20, the representative of the RPG. I'll go with that.
That's a good choice. I like, for me personally, I love the D12 just because it's not used often, but when it is, it's like,
bringing out
how much damage can I do? Like, I just want to crush something with my D12.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
And then I always feel sad for it because it generally just sits off. If I don't have a character that uses the D12, it's just like, okay, D12, you just go back in the bag.
Right? They just don't come out. I play different sets, like different color sets of dice per game or per character. So I bring them all out, but some of them just straight up get ignored.
Yeah, I feel bad for them. So we've covered kind of like the fantasy realm of stuff, but there's something that you're into that I'd love to kind of talk about and get to know more, because it's I feel like at times it can be really personal, especially with what people get into, and that is the world of theater. And just as an aside, we were talking before we started recording, and I got into theater through like Phantom of the Opera, and my wife, who suffered through Phantom of the Opera when I took her to go see it in New York City, she fell asleep during it, but she was more like Legally Blonde, Wicked.
Did she fall asleep in New York at the theater?
Yes.
Oh, that's worse. Okay, I thought you just showed her the movie or something.
Oh, no. I was like, hey, because we had moved to New York just temporarily, and we got like the cheap tickets at the ticket thing.
Yep.
And I was, okay, we're gonna go, and it's gonna be awesome. And like, she'd never seen it before. I saw it when I was in middle school at the time, and I said, okay, this is really good. And yeah, she
Fell asleep.
fell asleep.
Oh.
But she loves her Legally Blonde and Wicked and Lion King and those kind of theater shows. How did you first get interested in theater?
Whew.
A loaded question for sure.
Very. I mean, I started dancing when I was like 3, and growing up through dance, I realized that the part of it I liked most was the performing on the stage. And so when I was in elementary, I started auditioning for musicals and continued that up through high school, and went to school to become a theater teacher, to university to become a theater teacher. And now I direct the high school musical theater program that I graduated from, and I act in our community theater, and I direct sometimes for community theater. So it's just kind of been a journey all my life of it, I guess.
That's awesome. So you're back basically at your old high school directing.
Yes.
Do you teach there too? Just out of curiosity, like, and you don't have to answer. I can edit that out. I'm super curious about it.
No, that is what I do. I teach the musical theater and acting and stagecraft programs at our school where I graduated from.
Gotcha. I didn't know if you're just there to like do just the theater program and then
No, I'm a teacher there. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. That I was like, because that is something where I think it's the coolest thing to go from being a student at the high school and then making your way back to be there again. That's just something. There's something about that just is like, I don't know. I don't have the words for it, but it just seems really just.
It was a very cool moment for me when the first musical I directed for the high school program opened exactly 10 years after the grade 12 musical that I'd starred in was the same opening night. I don't think that made sense, but basically 10 years after the musical that I was in grade 12 opened, I directed the show that opened on the same weekend. So it was like a 10-year kind of round trip for me, which is really neat.
That is incredible. That's so cool. And teachers are definitely a profession where you're not really getting into it for the money. At least in the States, you're not. And
nope.
And there's just something about people that are teachers, and more power to you.
Thank you. I like my teaching job because it's a bit different. I get to work with, the theater kids, and they're such a passionate bunch. They mean a lot to me, and it makes going to work easier every day.
I got a quick question about this before we get back into like the theater side of things. Our theater, like, you were in the your theater program when you were in high school.
Mhm.
Are the theater kids now like the theater kids back then, or because theater is like more, I guess, more popular, or more there's like a lot of variant or variety, is like, are theater kids different now?
I don't think so. I feel like I'm a weird judge of that because I was kind of one of the quieter theater kids, but I mean, I think they're the same. They know more shows. Like, I think that's the coolest thing was when the kids come up to me like, "Have you heard of so and so musical? Have you listened to this soundtrack?" And I'll get a soundtrack from them about a show that's on Broadway or in the West End or something, or right? So they're just more aware because of YouTube and soundtracks and
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff. They know more of the songs that are out there and the shows that are out there. So that's really cool.
It is. That's one of the things, because that's what I was thinking of, is because there's so much variety, there's so much out there, there's so many different shows that are like almost like experimental at some stages of, let's see if this works, let's see how it works, let's try something that's just completely different, and then going from there. Versus, I mean, when I was growing up, it was like, I remember Phantom of the Opera and Rent and Cats and those like old
Mhm.
those old standard bearers
Those
of
classics. Yeah.
theater.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now it's just, I remember watching Avenue Q in New York, and it's like, that's a great show.
Fantastic. Yes. There's a school edition. I've wanted to order like the script just to see. I'm like, I don't know what you would cut from that show to make it school appropriate without cutting the entire show. But every year when I'm ordering scripts to peruse for the next year, I'm like, I need to read Avenue Q School Edition because I need to know.
Gosh, that I can't imagine.
I think there'd be two songs. I don't know.
I don't know if there'd be any songs,
No.
or it'd be like a stilted conversation.
Yeah. So someday I will read that and I will get back to you and let you know how many songs are in Avenue Q, the school edition.
Now, for your theater and enjoying the theater, do you have any favorites that you're like, I point to these and these are my favorites, and people need to go out there and watch them if they come to the town nearby?
Oh, I don't know. I like modern musicals, pop rock musicals. I'm not as big on the classics. Like I'll still enjoy them and watch them, but I'm going to New York for the first time in July and going to Broadway and gonna stay there for 4 days and just watch shows. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm going to see Moulin Rouge, the musical, which I'm pretty pumped about because I really liked the movie musical of it. So I'm hoping the Broadway's makes me as happy. um, yeah, I don't know. I just like anything that has a good soundtrack that I can sing along to. I know that's like the cop out answer, but it's rare for me to meet a musical that I don't like.
That's not the cop out answer. You can't say that. That's not allowed here. There's no cop outs. You love what you love. That's all there is to it.
Fair enough.
I did see that you had a few musicals on your list of musicals that you're into, and one of them I have no idea what it is, and you said it's Next to Normal.
Oh, yes, that is a favorite of mine. It's really not your typical happy musical. It's a family of three trying to keep it together. The mom's got bipolar depression, and it's about her being on medication and trying to cope with life and be normal. And but she has a psychosis where she sees her son, who's 19 but isn't 19 because he actually passed away as a baby. So she's the only one that can see him and interact with him throughout the show. And he sings with her, and it kind of takes your happy family musical and tips it on its head. But I just find it incredibly moving. It's one of the musicals that I've just listened to, I guess, and watched clips of that just kind of made me lose my breath.
Mm-hmm. And then on your list is like Hamilton, which I don't know if there needs to be more said about Hamilton.
I resisted it for so long. Because everybody was crazy about it, and I was like, nah, I'm not gonna like that. I don't like rap. That sounds like a terrible plan for a musical. So like 2.5 years after everybody was really into it, I don't know why, but I downloaded the soundtrack and I was like, guys, Hamilton's awesome. And they're like, where have you been? Like, come on, we're over this. I'm like, no, let's listen to it again. Like, we did this 2.5 years ago, Emry. Come on. So that's who I am and where I'm at.
Oh my goodness. I've not watched it. It came through Orlando last year, and our lovely place that did theater, that did, online to get tickets, they didn't anticipate how much demand there would be.
Oh,
And I'm pretty sure I stayed in the queue for like 9 hours, and it was just like, no, there's no tickets left at all.
oh yeah. I'm not sure if it's playing in New York when I'm there, but if it is, I'm gonna try to catch that one for sure. I also get to go see Six. Have you heard of that one?
I have not.
So it's the Six Wives of Henry VIII put together like a pop concert. It's kind of awesome. So yeah, I get to go see that. I'm actually doing some theater teacher training when I'm in New York. So I get to see Six in the Company and Harry Potter and the Cursed Child as part of that training that I'm taking. So that's kind of exciting.
That's the kind of job where, you really love your job and you get to do like fun stuff like that. Like you actually get to, it's not like you go to like a conference for whatever random job. Like,
Yeah.
if I went to the conferences that I work for my employment, it would be like, yeah, let's make it through so I can like go out into a nice restaurant or something. And
I don't get a lot of relevant pro D where I live. It's nobody's fault. It's just most of what we engage in up here isn't super helpful in my classroom or the types of things I teach, right? Like there's only so much you can take from the same thing that a math teacher and English teacher is getting and apply it to a theater program. But I'm very lucky that I have a supportive admin group at the school that is very pro arts. And so they're willing to send me out to get some training and to get some hands-on experience. I was in Vancouver last summer doing some lighting design courses and stuff like that. So just little things, but just I like to keep learning. There's so much out there.
and especially with theater, like it's evolving. Like, I said I'm very much classic stuff, although I like new stuff too, and my wife likes the new stuff. And theater's evolving with every year. Something is different, something changes, and that's really cool to like be able to just kind of evolve with it and go with it.
Yeah, I've been trying to keep so as not to have another Hamilton situation. I've been trying to keep up with kind of what's popular now, and my kids like to talk about it too. My students, they'll be like, "Have you heard of this musical? It's about Henry VIII's wives, and it's pop musical." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'll check it out." Like one of my girls dressed up as one of the characters for Halloween, so then we had a conversation. I went and listened to the soundtrack, and now I can talk to her about that. So they're into it, so I try to keep up with what's being talked about.
You're trying to stay hip.
I'm trying to stay hip with the kids.
I know my kids come home because one of them's in middle school and he'll say something. And I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about. And I feel like I'm on the internet enough. I should know, but I don't, because I have no clue what's happening in like that age group of what's cool.
Well,
I don't
and the words change, right? Like little things that my students will say, I'm like, okay, what does that actually mean now? Because I know there's context behind that.
For people that maybe they don't get to see musicals often, what musicals, if you had like a top 3, what would you recommend to people to like check out to get their feet wet into watching musicals?
Mamma Mia. I directed that one last year, and it's high energy, relevant, kind of unabashed about its sexuality. So definitely that one, Mamma Mia. If we're going classics, one of my favorite classics is Chicago. I feel like it's just well known. and the 20s vibe and the jazz and the dancing's all fun. I'm scrolling through my soundtracks right now. I feel like you needed to give me homework before this.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna say Newsies because I'm kind of obsessed with it right now. I love dancing, and so boys dancing on stage and singing wins for me.
That is one. I was about to say movie because I remember when the movie came out and I wanted to see it and I never did. And then now it's like it's a show again, or it is a show. I'm not too sure which came first, but
I believe the movie came and then the musical happened, and then they also did like a movie musical recording of the Broadway cast. So it's on Disney Plus, I think you can watch it, that it's got most of the original Broadway cast and they sing and dance, and
that's one of the things I'd like to have more of is give me a recording of the show so I can watch it.
absolutely. Unfortunately, it's not in everybody's budget or ability to travel to New York to see these shows. I've been into theater for years, and this will be my first time ever going, and so it's so inaccessible. Most of us will never get to, see these things. So I would love for more recordings to go out, but I'm not sure if that'll ever happen.
I would love for it to happen. I need it to happen because even when the shows come like through here, it's like, okay, family of 5 trying to get tickets.
Mhm.
And if we want better tickets, it's like, that $80-$100 range of decent seats, and that's a big chunk.
Absolutely, yeah.
Such is life.
It's okay, I guess, when our woe is that we can't see enough musicals in our life.
Yes, or not be able to go to conventions. That's the other thing. It's like I'm like, I'd really love to go to like all these different conventions, but there's flights and hotel and bringing everybody.
Again, we're really lucky because we're able to, and we get large chunks of fees for this right now at our school to get professional development, but we're able to wrangle going to a couple conventions as Pro D. My husband uses D&D in his classroom to teach to high anxiety students. So he teaches in kind of a specialized program, and so he goes and learns all about teaching with D&D, and I can use all the cosplay, costuming, and wigs, and working with foam and creating with Warbler. All those kind of fall into my stagecraft realm of having to create things to put on the stage. So we're in a super lucky position where some of these conventions are within our reach, but it's a rarity.
That is super cool. I love that people now are using tabletop gaming in schools, where when I went to high school and sat in my corner with people, it was definitely not supported.
No, so after our show finished, we just finished in my musical theater class, we just finished Grease. It went up for the first 2 weeks in December. And then we had 2 weeks of school left before Christmas happened. And so there was 90 kids, and we let them decide where they wanted to be. And I said, well, I'll run D&D as an English unit in here for 2 weeks. And I had, I think, over 50 kids in my group, and there was 7 tables of them playing. And like these kids who didn't hand in anything all semester, all of a sudden were handing me paragraphs of writing about their characters and their backstories. And like, this is what my husband does every day in his classroom, and it's kind of a miracle. But it's just so cool to see these kids get engaged with this kind of thing.
It's so incredible. And I love that it's something now. Like even my son's middle school has D&D after school as like a club to do, and it's like I love that. Like I don't know if I'd change going to school now as a kid, because it seems like a lot more, but that's like the cool one thing. Like that's cool.
Yeah,
like,
the accepting of the nerddom a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. Now, on top of everything that we've talked about, you have your own business, which we've talked about at the beginning of the podcast. Now here we are getting to the tail end of the podcast, and I want to talk about it because I think it's super cool. And it's Arishae, Arishae Creation, or Creations, and you make nerdy accessories and jewelry, and you make it out of chainmail.
I do.
How like What? Oh, okay. Let me rewind. Why chainmail, and how did you get into it?
I've loved making jewelry for as long as I can remember. My mother has just bucket loads of terrible jewelry that I made her and made her wear. So I'm sure she's happy that I've got somewhat better at it. But I could never really find the right niche for me. Like I've tried all kinds of crafting. I was like, I'll scrapbook, I could be good at that, or I'll crochet, give me some cross stitch. Like I wanted to be a crafter, but I was terrible at all those things. And so it was at Gen Con 3 years ago. I took a class that was like a scale mail bracer, and I was like, that sounds cool. So I took it in the evening and I was like, oh, this is really fun. And then I went back to the hotel room and I was like, man, I want to make more of this stuff. Like, so I was like, gonna look it up. And so I went onto Pinterest and I typed in scale mail, and instead of armor coming up, a whole bunch of jewelry came up, and I was like, oh my God, I need to do this. So it just kind of went from there. So like that fall, I just spent a lot of time trial and error because I didn't know a lot of the ins and outs of what I was working with in terms of tools and materials and sizes. And I just ordered tons of stuff and I played around with sizes and colors and I made some of my first pieces, and then I was just wearing it. And then people were like, that's so cool. Can you make me one like that? And so I started making one for my friends or D&D group or that kind of thing. And then it just kind of was like, well, if there's like a niche here, people are wanting this stuff and it's different. Like I think there's maybe one other person in my town too, maybe, that do chainmail, and I seem to have gotten into a niche on Twitter where it's not saturated with it yet, which has been really cool. And so I just started playing around with jewelry, and then it just kind of grew from there and made my first dice bag. And then I don't know what brought on the D20 capture, because that's like my big seller, I guess, is those D20 keychains I make.
Hmm.
So I did one of those up, and like Twitter went cray cray, and then it just kind of went from there. So
I'm still like amazed by the chainmail. And can you just like, do you how do you make things? You're not like banging on stuff with a hammer, are you? Or are you like using like pliers to?
I order my rings just because I would love to make my own. For sake of time, I don't, because like I work half time as a teacher. I'm a full-time mom. I do theater. All these things take up a lot of hours. So basically, I work my business in the mornings and a little bit in the evenings. So I order my rings from a couple different sources. And then basically, you just have to kind of open the ring very slightly to keep its rounded shape, and then like weave it into other rings and close it. And just the way you put it into other rings, or how many other rings you put it into, or the order changes the pattern. And the rest just kind of falls together. So once you get a pattern going, it's fairly easy, and it's just a repetition.
Gotcha. Okay, so you are not like anviling and got like a outdoor workspace to get like these things done, but it is still, I always say whenever I talk to people, whether they're crafters like you or cosplayers or artists, like it's always something where I look at it and it's like, dang, if I wish my hands like worked in the way that they need to work to just do something like neat like that, because it's just incredible to look at the finished product and I don't know, like it's just so cool.
No, I get what you're saying, because that's, like I said, I was kind of a failed crafter at everything I tried. And I just couldn't find that one thing that kind of worked for me. And what I love about chainmail is, and this gets me in trouble when I say it, I'm not necessarily super artistic or creative. I just like playing with the patterns and matching the patterns. So while I'm not developing anything new or anything like that, but I can, I try different colors out or try a different weave or so on and so forth. And it's just following a pattern. It's just repetition. And I actually, when I was starting to do it, it was just because it was good for my anxiety, because it was a repetition pattern. And then it just kind of grew into something more. But I get what you're saying when I see the cosplayers, and sorry, I hit my mic. When I see the cosplayers and stuff, it's just, I mean, what people can create is insane.
I want to ask, because I love the dice bags that you do, and I'm curious, like what's like your time, like a like from start to finish, what's your average on making those?
I can knock out a small one in probably 45 minutes. and a larger one, probably hour and a half.
Okay, if we had like totally don't have webcams on, but as you were saying that, like my eyes just kind of like did the whole like cartoon big giant eyes with my mouth just open because that's like mind blowing right there.
The dice bags actually come together faster than most things I make because they're big scales and the pattern is very simplistic. It's one of the most basic ones you can do in terms of laying it out. So like I streamed last night for about 40 minutes and I did a complete flat lay of one. I just have to put the bottom on it still. So it's just a matter of repetition, and yeah.
That's so cool. I'm still just I like going to your site just to look at how pretty and shiny they are because that's the other thing is that like the color combinations that you do on some of them, I'm like, man, that's really like that's just a great color combination. Or I think there was one, it was a one where it had 3 or 4 different colors, but they went I guess it's what ombre, where it's like it just went in and like I was like, dang, that's so cool yet again. Like
I just like pulling out all my containers and like laying them out, and I just pick and choose a couple colors for an evening and go. Like I commission a couple of my dice. Well, no, sorry, I commissioned dice bags at a couple different stores in I guess Alberta, and I love when they put orders that are just like, we just want 5 larges and 6 smalls, whatever patterns you want. Because then I'm like, yes, I can get creative and like, right, rather than like, we need 5 rainbows and 2 black and silver stripes. So I like when I get to kind of play with patterns and make up something new.
so you've been doing this for a little bit, a couple of years now. What's your experience been as like being on that side of like the sales side of the tabletop, I guess, industry, so to speak?
Yeah, I don't like being salesy. I should probably do better at at that aspect of it. Mostly on Twitter, especially, I just like to share what I'm working on because I feel like that's what people are enjoying, is seeing pictures of like what I've been creating. And it's probably the platform I'm most busy on specifically for that kind of thing. I've done one expo and I have another one coming up here, and that was kind of a learning curve and it was good. Yeah, it's been an interesting, because people are always like, when you run a business, they're like, you need to know your ideal customer. And I was like, I have 2 very separate groups of people that buy from me. I have the lovely nerdy folks that buy my D20 keychains and dice bags and mantles and bracers. And then I have middle-aged mothers who buy my jewelry. And so whenever I try to take like a marketing course or like, increase my business knowledge, because I'm just learning as I go. So I'm just trying to keep educated and up with what's up. So I'll take these courses, and like the first thing they always say is like, you need to know your ideal customer. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm doing this twice then, because I've got 2 separate groups. And they don't cross.
Yeah, they don't really cross. Yeah.
No. So
oh my goodness. I guess one of the things I'd love to know is there a hard part? And of course there's got to be a hard part, but is there like something that sticks out for you? Like, what's something that people wouldn't know about your business that you'd love for them to know about it?
I guess one of the hard parts for me is, like I kind of touched on earlier, it's just the repetition of stuff, not the weaving itself, but the repetition of colors. So if somebody was like, I sell a couple the jewelry collections, like the ombre collection or the sweet pea collection, and they do well, but that's me making the same color combo and the same bracelet over and over and over. I love when I get messages on Etsy or my website that are like, hey, do you think you could take this necklace and hang a D20 on it with a clip so I could take it off and roll it and have this chain? And I'm like, yes. Like, I love that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody just messaged me and was like, can you make my brother a jersey, or can you make this headpiece for us? And I'm like, that's the kind of stuff I get excited about, where I get to stretch the creative muscles a little bit more and play around with creating. But I mean, that's not to say any business is built on the staples of what you create. That's what you're known for.
Right, exactly.
So, am I sad that I make a lot of D20 keychains? No, that's great, because that means there's cool people out there that want my nerdy stuff, and I like that.
And that is a cool thing. I love, again, as I said when we were talking about, you can find anything you want to play for tabletop gaming. You can definitely find like any kind of accessories now. And I think
absolutely,
the cool thing about yours, and like you had mentioned, is that I don't really see a lot out there of what you do, and it's nice that you have that, like that's your thing, and hopefully people get to go to your site and be amazed and buy stuff.
That's what I hope too. It's a strange thing, because there are quite a few mailers out there. I mean, Instagram has got absolutely tons of them. On Facebook, I follow a number of them. They just don't seem to be on Twitter as much, or in our circle of people, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I only know 2 or 3 other Twitter people that I tweet with that also chainmail. And so it seems like such a rarity, because it seemed like such a natural nerd craft to go with all the nerdy things we do. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of lucked out, I guess, in falling to this niche of awesome people on Twitter who also think my chainmail stuff's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. I love it.
Thank you.
So for people that have listened to this podcast episode and they want to check you out, whether it's following you on Twitter or checking out your web pages for buying stuff, or even watching you stream as you make stuff, what are the best places people can find you so that they can check you out?
Definitely Twitter's the easiest. I'm at Arishae Creations. And then from there, on my profile is both my website and my Twitch streaming, which I'm trying to get more into. I was going strong in the summer, and then as soon as I fell into directing again, I was like, whoop, nope, and stopped. So I'm going to stream again tomorrow night, and just get back into some routine of it.
Okay, awesome. And I will have all the links to your Etsy and Twitch and Twitter and Facebook page. Perfect. And everything that I could possibly link will be in the show notes and on the website and on my Facebook page, so that way people can just easily click and go to the whichever they prefer. Definitely please go to the website, to, even if you don't want to buy anything, just go look at the shiny stuff, because it's really, really good. I know, like, I'd love to have it on my wish list at some point, but my dice bags reside in like a drawer next to where I'm sitting, and they don't really see the light of day that often, so it wouldn't be fair to them.
Fair enough.
But Emry, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come and talk to me about your fandoms and your business and everything in between, because I really enjoyed it. And I have to say, like, I love when I get to have people from Twitter like come on and talk to me, because I feel like I've already know you, like, air quote, know you as in some kind of fashion, and I love just getting to know people more and build that.
Well, absolutely. Connection. I was excited that we were tweeting about Lord of the Rings last week, and I was like, we're going to get to talk about this next week.
Yes.
So
yes.
It's just nice.
It feels like it has definitely been a Lord of the Rings past couple of days, but yeah, it's Lord of the Rings, man. It's one of those fandoms that, if you ask me what's going to be popular in another 100 years or 200 years, Lord of the Rings is still going to be there somewhere.
That's fair. Well, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate you reaching out and asking if I want to do this. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.